A number of years ago, I think I talked about this a while ago. A number of years ago, when I was still studying, I did a Ministry of Teaching overseas mission, and that's where you can choose to go to a number of different countries. I'd chosen to go to Nepal, and you teach for a few weeks. And then in our particular trip, we had planned to hike to Everest Base Camp at the end of it. And so a lot of preparation for it. The classrooms we were heading into had, okay, look, yeah, we're learning English. It's going to be great. Not a word of English. The school that particularly I ended up at was an hour hike up in the mountains, and one day they're looking forward to having some running water and maybe electricity. So it was a bit of a wild kind of mission to go on, which was super exciting. I'd been privileged before we went to have been able to travel pretty reasonably um, over the years, but this experience was transformative in terms of some of the confronting things that um, we were a part of, and it's just physically really tough. If you've ever been to that part of the world, the cuisine is delicious, but not all parts of your body will agree with that always. So, look, amazing trip, hectic trip, but we were really looking forward to at the end of it. This experience of being to hike to Everest Base Camp. How cool is that? And we finished up the teaching part. We really saw God working in the trip. It was amazing. But we sat at Kathmandu Airport in preparation to fly out to Lukla. If you ever want to do the Everest Base Camp trail, you got to fly into Lukla Airport, which is, if you see those air crash investigation shows, yeah, it's its favourite topic. So that's awesome. It's like a 10-story difference from the bottom of the runway to the other. And if you take off from Kathmandu and the weather comes in, it's a real choose your own adventure kind of vibe once you get on the plane. We happened to be there in the off season as well. So the weather was pretty trash, and we'd sat in the Kathmandu airport for about 4 days, and our lecturer said, "You know what? We're going to have to pivot here because there's a chance that we can't even get in to the airport." So he made the decision that we would pivot and instead climb to Annapurna Base Camp. Now, Annapurna Base Camp is, of course, a bit lower than Everest, but it's a little bit more challenging in terms of terrain. Everest Base Camp, you do 2 really wild, straight up days, and then it kind of tapers off a little bit, and that's that kind of gradual incline until you come into base camp, and it's quite an arid area. If you've ever seen any pictures of it, it's pretty barren. That's just the area. Whereas Annapurna, you start on another mountain, and then you go up that mountain and down the other side, and then you go up and down a heap of mountains till you finally get to the base camp of Annapurna. But it's more lush. It's really pretty. Let's see how quickly I can stuff these up. There you go. This is, as we come up to Annapurna Base Camp there, it's so beautiful. It's really vibrant greens. The flowers are all the colours of the rainbow. You've got the bubbling brook. It's really feeling Narnia, Lord of the Rings-esque. Like, it's really beautiful. Pretty wild terrain, as you can see, but it's a really beautiful spot. And we'd so been looking forward to this mountaintop experience, and we finally made it to the Annapurna Base Camp. We call it the summit, but for everybody else, it's literally just the base camp. But it still felt really fantastic. And this is what you're greeted with there at base camp. And we stayed there overnight, the best part of the next day, and it was pretty euphoric. I'm not going to lie. After the hecticness that had been the few weeks before, the exhaustion on the body, the exhaustion emotionally and spiritually with some of the things that we'd been a part of, to make it to here, to celebrate with our team, that bonding experience, that was really special. But as I mentioned before, being the off season and being Annapurna, it wasn't like, sweet, we've made it to the mountain, let's cruise on the way down. You have to up and down it all the way back to the other mountain where you can get picked up. So you've almost got to earn the respite at the end. And we were a couple of days into the journey to our pickup location, and I was zealously jumping over, and I'll go back to this one, this kind of trail terrain with underappreciated 20-year-old knees. I was jumping from rock to rock to get down to this village, and because the village we were staying at for this night was kind of the last, like, this is super cool. It actually had hot springs in it. Kind of feels pretty counterintuitive in the Himalayas to have hot springs, but it did. And the body needed it. We were ready. And so we were fanging it down the mountain to try and get there for the night. And I jumped off this rock like this, and it fell. I had my boots on. These are my boots from it. I jumped off the rock, and it fell. It collapsed into a hole, and I followed it. And I followed it really with open arms, and particularly my ankle. And as I learned the laws of gravity, I heard this pretty yuck snapping, popping sound, which if you've ever had an injury like that, it doesn't spark joy. And I kind of I fell into this hole and kind of flailed and landed on the path, and was in a bit of a situation. I tried to, because everything hurts the first 5 minutes, and if you pretend you're not injured, then you're not. So I tried to stand up, and I tried to keep going, and the pain was really bad. It was bad. And my foot just wasn't stable, even though I was in my boots. If I hadn't been wearing my boots, my foot just wasn't stable at all. I'm trying to stand on it, just keeps giving way, and the pain was really significant. Now, a little issue that you have when hiking in this part of the country is you want to always hike with someone, because there's like tigers and mountain lions, and we had experienced those during the trip. So you always want to hike near someone because they're less likely to look at you as an hors d'oeuvre. So I found myself in the middle of a path on my own with my foot not looking awesome, and waiting to be snickety-snacketied on, it was really, I was trying not to panic, but it was pretty stressful. But fortunately for me, and perhaps by divine intervention, I had a friend who hadn't been that far behind me and likely heard the fall. And she found me there lying on the path. And instead of moving on and trying to get to the village, she, of course, stayed with me, and she lifted me up and tried to help me walk. And it wasn't great at all. She physically held me and propped me up, didn't you, Michaela? You physically held me and propped me up. And we started this journey to this village. And I didn't know how long it was going to be. It was my first time. I didn't know where it was. And she propped me up and helped carry me for 4 hours up and down this mountain, up this nonsense, till I could get to this village and try and get some more help from our team. There's not a chance I can make it on my own. Thank the Lord for someone willing to help, for someone willing to try and sustain me when I certainly couldn't do it on my own. We made it to the village, which I'm not going to lie, when every step is agony, it's really hard. Like, time really slows down, and you want to pack it in at every step, right? Because you don't know how much longer I've got to this next village. You want to pack it in. So to have someone come on one more step to sit and rest with me when I couldn't take the pain anymore, it was absolutely pivotal to making it to this other village. Anyway, I got some assistance from my team. We borrowed some strapping tape, basketball brace, some Nepali chemist medicine, and we had 30 more kilometers to go. And it was a tough hike. It's a tough hike when you don't know how much left you got in the tank, It's tough when physically can I take it anymore? I went from I'm king of the mountain. Look at this awesome. I went from I'm king of the mountain. What an amazing experience to please roll me off the side of the mountain. That demise was pretty dramatic and was pretty quick. But a journey between the mountains can do that to you, can't it? A journey between that. Because when we finally made it to when the truck could pick us up, it wasn't like a banner of, you've made it to the end of the trail, congratulations. It's just you step into a village and a truck can finally make it up the hill and you can hop in. Like there was no, I have to make it to this point. It's just you're hoping the truck's going to be there. You know, so when it did show up, the level of relief, I cannot explain to you. The level of relief to get off that cankle is something that I will never forget. And this story really reminds me of one that's fascinated me since I was little. It's found in 1 Kings, over chapter 18 and 19. If you've got your Bibles with you, we'll be a bit all over those two chapters today. And it's about the prophet Elijah and his little journey between some pretty important mountains and his long-term standoff with King Ahab and the prophets of Baal. If you're not familiar with the story, I'll do a pretty brief recap. Essentially, Ahab had killed all of the prophets of God and torn down all of the temples and worship areas of God. And he'd set up places for Baal and Asherah, which if you want to do some further study into the practices of those two gods, it's certainly not something that we're going to talk about today with kids in the room. It's a pretty wild pivot from praising God to praising Baal. And God sends Elijah to Ahab and says, hey, mate, there's not going to be rain until I say so, to prove to you that I am God. And Elijah runs off. He's fed by the brook Cherith with the ravens bringing food. It's really amazing. But after 3 years, it is absolutely desolate. The famine is insane. It says that Ahab was sending out his workers into the kingdom to try and find enough grass that was alive to feed his horse. There was nothing left. People are dying. They were at rock bottom. And it's at this time that God sends Elijah to tell Ahab and his prophets, let's have a little challenge and put to bed once and for all who's really God here. So Elijah asked that the prophets of Baal and Asherah, there was about 850 in total, 450 of those were for Baal, all the people of Israel and the king to gather on Mount Carmel. Now, Mount Carmel is the little triangle right up the top there, and the bit of blue that you can see there, we're heading into Galilee. So Jerusalem's down here, right down the bottom. We follow it down. Egypt's over here somewhere. It's right up the top there, squeezed in next to the Mediterranean Sea. And there's this whole Carmel range there. So it's just one particular mountain, there's a range. And he says, let's meet all the people of Israel, Ahab and all the bigwigs, everybody, let's meet on the top of Carmel. And I've got a challenge for you. What's going to happen is, I've got the direct verses here. In verse 21, actually, we'll pivot a second. In verse 21, he gathers everybody up the top there and he says, how much longer, he says to the people of Israel, how much longer are you going to waver, hobbling between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him. But the people were completely silent, which is definitely a sermon for another day. But it reiterates the importance of this challenge. This challenge isn't just for Ahab. The challenge is for the Israelites as well. Because when presented with a choice, they are silent. So God says for Elijah to tell them, hey, we're going to have a standoff of sacrifices here. I've got 2 bulls, you pick one. And it says, now bring 2 bulls, as verse 23 and 24 in chapter 18. Now bring 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal may choose whichever one they wish to cut to pieces and lay on the altar of wood, but without setting fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood of the altar, but not set fire to it. Then call on the name of your God, and I'll call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by setting fire to the wood is the true God. And all the people agreed. Fantastic. The gauntlet's officially been thrown down, and Elijah graciously allows the prophets of Baal to kick off this this standoff first. And they set up their altar and they start singing, they start dancing. Elijah really leans into egging them on and openly mocks them for an entire day. I do think the more you read about Elijah and stuff about Elisha as well, they were savages in terms of they weren't ashamed of calling something out or openly ribbing someone. It's pretty hilarious that we're reading that a couple of thousand years later. All day these clowns dance around and nothing happens. And Elijah finally goes, "That's it, you've had your turn, now it's my turn." And he gets 12 big stones to represent the tribes of Israel. And he sends some servants down the mountain. And we're not exactly sure, being the drought that it was in, exactly sure where they got the water from. Perhaps it's actually from the Mediterranean because they're literally that close. And drags all this water up onto the altar, builds a trough, the whole thing, and just makes a real swimming pool of his altar to really prove a point. He doesn't want there to be any question that there's been any trickery here. He wants it to be really, really clear. He says in verse 36, he lays the sacrifice on top, ready to go, and he says, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are God in Israel, and that I'm your servant. Prove that I have done all this at your command." Verse 37 says, "O Lord, answer me so that these people will know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have brought them back to yourself." He says this prayer, and God immediately sends a bolt of fire from heaven. It consumes not just the sacrifice, it consumes the water, it consumes the stones. It is an absolute slam dunk, no questions asked, so clear, I am God. And the Israelites call out. They're not silent anymore. They call out, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." God fulfills His promise, and not long after, rain pours from heaven. And Elijah was able to be used by God for this insane miracle. When you read the Bible, there isn't that many literal and metaphorical mountaintop experiences that can really top this one, right? This is kind of it, right? This is really up there. Now, it's the next sequence of events that I've always found a little bit challenging. And Elijah comes off the mountain. They interact with the prophets of Baal and Asherah. And he comes off this mountaintop experience both physically and spiritually. And as he does, Ahab's wife, who was really fond of her prophets, is not pleased with how this challenge went. And she says to Elijah, "Mate, I'm after you, and I'm going to kill you." And Elijah panics. And he takes up with his servant, and he takes off from Mount Carmel up there. Oh, I am the wrong way. He takes off. I think I've missed one. That's totally fine. He takes off from up there at Mount Carmel all the way down here, further down to Jezreel. It's about 120 to 180 kilometres with his servant from Carmel all the way down. He fangs it. He gets to Jezreel and he leaves his servant in Jezreel. And alone, he runs off into the wilderness. He runs off to the wilderness, helter-skelter, and he gets there one whole day. Does one whole day of running into the desert, and he collapses. He collapses under it. This is a broom tree. There is nothing there. This is a broom tree. It's a pretty poor excuse for a tree. It's more of a shrub. And he collapses under this shrub, and he says, "God, I can't take it. Kill me. I can't take it anymore." He lasts one day. He takes one day. It's a pretty dramatic decline from fire from heaven to "I'm hiding under a bush, please kill me." Fortunately for Elijah, human failures can't change the kindness of God, and God sends his angels to sustain Elijah, and they give him bread, and he rests. God sends his angels again in 1 Kings 19:7. It says, "The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, 'Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you.'" And we know that Elijah, once again, got up, he ate, he drank, and he rested. He accepts sustenance sent from heaven. It's after this point, after being refueled here, he travels for 40 days and nights through the desert up onto Mount Horeb. And I'll see if I ever remembered to put that in. Yeah, there we go. Mount Horeb, which is all the way down here. It's like 400 kilometers away. He travels 40 days and nights through the wilderness, through absolutely nothing, to get all the way to Mount Horeb. And this is where, which is sometimes translated as Mount Sinai, by the way, so hence some confusion sometimes there. We get in verses, this is where we get those amazing verses and phrase talked about a couple of weeks ago. In 1 Kings 20, verse 11 and 12, he goes up into this mountain, hides in a cave, and God says to him, "Go out and stand before me on the mountain," the Lord told him. And as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by and a mighty windstorm hit the mountain. It was such a terrible blast that the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire of the Lord, another fire. And after the fire, there was a sound of a gentle whisper. That's where we get this from. We've got our fire from heaven and we've got our gentle whisper, two different mountains. It's here on day 41, Elijah covers his face, walks out and has this conversation with God, and God reveals himself to Elijah, and he walks past him. Instead of bread and water refueling him, now it's the presence and the word of God in the presence of God. I love that when God speaks to Elijah, he doesn't mention the failures that kind of happened before for us to get to this other mountain. He doesn't say, stuff you, mate. Here you are whinging under a bush. Let's not even bother with the 40 days ahead, because God knows we can't alter our past, but we can put our past on the altar. So he brings us on day 41 and walks by, right? Instead of just leaving him under the bush, he starts prepping him. He starts prepping him for the journey ahead, because he says, the journey's too much for you. Don't panic. I'm going to prepare you for it. Even though Elijah, in the depths of despair, has lost sight of his own capabilities, God still shows up and feeds him. I love that Elijah is just like us. He's just a person just like us. And Eugene Peterson says, he describes him as a man made of the same clay that you and I are made from. A little bit of a comforting feeling, because there's these two mountaintop experiences will be very different, but it's what happened in the middle. I think that's where I often find myself. I have this journey between. I have these awesome God experiences, awesome spiritual highs, these awesome things, and then I find myself under a broom tree. I can't take it anymore. Like, what happened? So I find looking at this story of Elijah pretty encouraging for me and my faith journey, because it teaches me a number of things. Number one, Elijah only made it one day. Made it one day on his own into the wilderness. After this mountaintop call fire from heaven extravaganza, he lasts one day. You would think, when we read it, we're like, wow, what an amazing person. That should sustain someone for a lifetime, should it not? One day. No sooner had he separated from God's power on the mountain, and he was separated from his support servant, his support person, he found himself under the tree. See, separation from the source of sustenance and support leads to suffering. I'll say it again because I'm Dr. Seuss. Separation from the source of sustenance and support leads to suffering. It's easy when we're tired to think of ourselves as alone in that wilderness part of fighting the good faith, but in our aloneness, God comes to us and assures us that we're not. Number two, something I find encouraging. Number two is that the angels came and fed him on God's command, and he ate. He doesn't sit there and wallow and let the food rot. He still eats. He still drinks, and he still rests. He still actively does something in response to what God is trying to give him. While we're still in despair, he accepted help, and he refueled. The courage to accept help when in despair. To be still and stopped enough to accept that help. Number 3, I find encouraging that God knew how long, how hard, how tough the journey ahead would be. So he gave him enough to get there, right? Elijah didn't know it was going to be 40 days. Elijah just ate. Elijah didn't know how far into the wilderness. He didn't know it was going to be Mount Sinai. He didn't know that. He just ate and then he went. God's the one that knew how far that journey would be and how long and how hard it would be. God gave him enough, and God knows my journey enough to give me enough to make it through my 40 days. And the last one, which I think for me is maybe the most important, is that day 41 was worth the journey. Thank goodness he held on for day 41. It's on day 41 that God reveals himself to him. Hold on for 41. So for me, I look at myself and I go, it's great. I'm not alone when I collapse under the broom tree. I'm not alone when I'm stuck between the two mountains. But it's what I'm doing when I'm stuck. What am I doing when I'm stuck there? Like, am I allowing him to sustain me? Or am I still trying to do it myself? Am I trying to stand up and stumble my way to the hot springs on my own with very little success? Am I actually even stopping under the tree enough to recognize I need the help, that I need the sustenance? Am I listening to the voice of an angry queen in this circumstance that's gotten me discouraged in the first place? Who is fueling me here? Sometimes I wonder if I'm a little bit Saul, who physically had to be stopped before he could be sustained on his road, on his journey between his two mountains. I think about what it would have been like for Elijah after his siesta and snacks in the sun to then set off on his trail, not knowing how long it was going to be, the 40-day journey through to Mount Horeb. But he still took it step by step anyway. When I'm in the 40 days, what am I relying on to get to 41? I don't want to go back to the tree, but I don't know how much longer I can take it. I don't know how many more days I can keep going, right? But in the Bible, it tells us in many stories, day 41 is worth the journey. Hold on for day 41. In fact, you ready? Genesis 7:12. The rain poured and continued to fall for 40 days and 40 nights. What happened on day 41? The rain stopped. Thank goodness they waited for 41. 1 Samuel 17:16. For 40 days, every morning and every evening, the Philistine champion strutted out in front of Israel's army. What happened on day 41? Goliath is delivered to the Israelites through God's power with a stone and a sling. Day 41 was worth the wait, wasn't it? Exodus 24:18. Then Moses disappeared into the cloud as he climbed higher on the mountain, and he remained on the mountain for 40 days and nights. What did he bring down on 41? On day 41, he brings down the law of God. It's pretty pivotal, isn't it? Day 41 was pretty important. Thank goodness he didn't give up on the mountain on 39. Matthew 4, verses 1 and 2, even Jesus experiences the 41. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted there by the devil. For 40 days and 40 nights he's fasted and he became hungry. On day 41, the devil fled and the angels took care of him. Hold on for 41. There are so many different examples in here. Day 41 is worth the wait. Are we holding on for 41? But what does that mean, surrendering to his sustenance and holding on for 41? What does it mean when we're in that journey, when we're stuck between the two mountains? What does that look like? A number of years ago, I was on a family trip and we went to Vatican City to the Sistine Chapel, which was pretty incredible. And I lined up, shuffled through the gilded rooms, pretended not to take photos, and found myself underneath Michelangelo's Creation. I think I got a picture of it here. Let's have a little look. Creation. There we go. If you haven't seen it before, you have been living under a rock. Creation of Adam. Now, Michelangelo is not just known for his paintings, of course. It's his sculptures as well. Thank you, sculptures. I'm like, what is sculptures as well? He's really known for his intricate physical detail. Everything's done on purpose, and like there's this marble carving that he's done, and every ligament and tendon. There's one ligament that moves when you move your pinky finger, and he's chiseled it in there because he's that particular with detail, right? Michelangelo doesn't paint by accident. And I don't think here, you know what I notice when I look at this painting? One of these figures is really trying to reach the other. The other's not putting in the same amount of effort. Is it? I don't think Michelangelo painted Adam's apathetic finger on an accident. Adam is so close to touching the God of the universe, he just doesn't stretch out. Look at this. He doesn't stretch his finger. He's so close. He's on day 39. He's so close for the future that's ahead of him. He's so close for the calling that God has for him. He's so close for the purpose. Don't give up on day 39. Are you kidding me? Stretch out your finger. Get up and eat. He's provided the food. He's provided the drink. He's told you to rest. Stretch out and do something about it. Don't be Adam's apathetic finger. Don't do the Adam special. What are we doing? Don't give up on day 39, on day 40. 41 is coming. You know what? Sometimes it's not that you're stretching out your finger for the fire in heaven moment, nor the wind and the earthquake. It was in the stillness and the journey that he sustained, isn't it? It was in the stillness, it was in the waiting, it was in the stopping between the two mountains that he sustained. That's where he sustained us. That's where he sustained him. He was found sustaining Elijah when he was stopped under the tree in between the two mountains. But when he offered that food and drink, he didn't do the Adam special. He ate and he drank and he was fulfilled and he was sustained for what he didn't even know was prepared ahead. The Hebrew word for wait is the word kavah, which I've definitely said wrong. And if there's anyone that can actually speak it, fight me later. The word kavah in Hebrew also means entwine. Bonded. Doesn't just mean sit there. It means be entwined. Be bonded. So we're using that concept of surrendering to his sustenance and holding on to 41 between the two mountains. Maybe it looks like entwining yourself in him. Maybe it looks like being bonded to his food, to his word. Sometimes, what does that even look like? I mean, he gave us 66 books of it. And but I really want to hear his voice. Well, it comes in audio. The food's there, yeah? But what does this mean for us today? What's the whole point? What's the whole point of this day? Perhaps today is a reminder that the fire from heaven experiences, they're amazing. That's fantastic. But it's not the only place that he's reaching for you. There's always a journey between the two mountains. There's always a journey between the mountains. He doesn't just visit us on the mountains. Perhaps this is a reminder for you to stop and be sustained because you've made it a singular day in the wilderness and things aren't working out for you. I was listening to this pastor who had this big social media presence at his church, and one of his constituents was an 80-year-old. She goes, "Pastor, I've gotten onto Instagram and I'm following you." And he goes, "That's awesome, well done." And she goes, "Yeah, I'm really enjoying it, really enjoying all this extra stuff." And she goes, "But I have noticed something with you, Pastor. You're real busy. Really busy." Laura Jane talked about this a couple of weeks ago. "You're really busy." And this pastor says, "Yeah, the devil doesn't sleep." And she goes, "Mate, why is the devil your role model? Jesus rested." When rest feels like a sin, maybe work's become a bit of an idol. Is that what you need? Is that why we're here today? Is this an invitation for you to reflect on where are you getting your fuel from? And if you're a bit stagnant, maybe it's to dial in, where is that coming from? What voices am I listening to? What table am I eating at? Maybe this is a reminder to be better than Michelangelo's Adam. You're so close. You're so close. He's already sustained you. You might not know it yourself. He's already sustained you. You're on day 40. You're on day 40. 41's coming. Maybe that's it. 41's around the corner. He's given you what you need. He knows the length of the journey. Trust that he knows the length and he's prepared you for it. Separation from the source of sustenance and support leads to suffering. Don't give in and give up on day 1 because, the wilderness is tough. It's trash. I'm exhausted. I don't like it. Day 15. Oh, I've done a good job. I've made it. Day 15. Day 38. You are so close. Hold on for 41. I don't know if you need to be asked who you are in this story more than where you are in this story between these mountains. If you're under the broom tree, accept help. Don't travel alone. Fulfill yourself with what he's provided for you. If you've been fed and you're in transit, awesome, well done. Congratulations. But rely on that he has provided for you for this journey, right? And if you're in the fire from heaven moment in your life, in your spiritual life at the moment, awesome. That's excellent. But remember, he doesn't need fire from heaven to get to you. He's always there in the journey between the two mountains. Day 41 is so close. Hold on for your 41.